Hey guys, you know what time it is? It's time for another edition of the Blue White Breakdown podcast, PennLive's Penn State podcast. I'm Bob Flounders, joined as always by Dave Jones. Dave, I hope you're doing well. I see we're both independently rocking the colors of some old Big Eight schools. If you guys,
we're celebrating the fifth down game, right? Is that right?
that was Colorado.
Oh, damn! Whatever happened with Missouri and Nebraska? I don't remember.
Nothing really famous. Although James Wilder and Missouri beat Nebraska when they were one the week after they beat Oklahoma and Billy Sims. Missouri came into Nebraska. I think it was 78, and then beat them.
Steve Pisarkowitz.
Yeah, I think Phil Bradley is another name that's in there. Missouri quarterback.
Steve Pisarkowitz beat
Spell
him.
it. Spell it.
Pisarkowicz. I think that's it. I think that's it.
Yeah, Dave, I've always wondered with these podcasts that we do, I think a lot of people listen to them. I don't really know how many people actually watch them. I don't know what that breakdown is, but
there aren't any. There's some drawbacks in watching rather than listening.
But I'm just saying,
the way we look now,
we're always talking about Kaiser and what we're wearing, and I don't even know if people know what the hell we're talking about because they're probably just listening. We apologize for that, but I'm wearing a Nebraska shirt.
The reason
he's got a Mizzou shirt on.
The reason I like Flounders is he puts his bias right out there. Jones denies it, but Flounders, at least we know he loves Nebraska and hates Penn State.
Dave, you just know. You just know when you wrote that story on Herb Street what they were thinking. You praised them.
I got good mail on Herbie. I think people genuinely like Herbie. Penn Staters like Herbie because he came right out and said that they have the best crowd in the Big Ten, the best student crowd in the Big Ten, and they were like, that guy's okay. That guy's okay. He's not a bad guy.
He knows how to suck up. He does, and it's part of the job. Kudos to him. Looking forward to hearing him call some and watching him hopefully call some games.
He had to move. He had to move to Nashville because of the Ohio State fans.
Yeah, you had to move to Downingtown because of the Ohio State fans. Let's get that out there right now.
After I confronted a couple of those blockheads, because it's the dumbest, out of control crowd in the league. Wisconsin people want to have fun.
Yeah.
Ohio State, a lot of the Ohio State people want to just berate other fans. They're just dopes so often, and you can't really excuse it. They were after the 45-6 game, the 2000 game, and you remember what happened there.
Taliaferro, right?
You weren't there, but Adam Taliaferro was momentarily paralyzed. Well, for a while paralyzed in that game. People saw it. It's not like you didn't see it. And I'm on the field for the last 5 minutes anyway. But of course for that, I mean, it was just frightening stuff. And you could see when they took him away, even though it was across the other side of the field, that his hands were. I think at one point I remember them taking one of his arms and putting him up here, and everyone's going, oh no, oh no, and yet. When the Penn State, they've been beaten, mind you, by 39 points. The Penn State, they're going to go 4, 5, and 6 that year. Was that? I believe that was 5 and 7.
That sounds about right for them.
First lose. They've been beaten soundly, and there's a couple of 5'9", 300-pound guys on the railing right above me. And when all the Penn State players go into the tunnel, they go, "We kicked your ass. We kicked your ass, going back to state." And I actually looked up at these guys and said, "Did you see what happened? Did you see what happened? You couple of, profanity." And they were like, "What?" They didn't get it at all. I think you could get more of those in Columbus than any place in the league.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, great
right.
fans. Michigan, they sit on their hands.
Yeah.
Iowa, great fans. Nebraska, great fans.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Dave, and Penn State's coming back out to Ohio State this year, so maybe some of those guys will be in the stands, and they're going to remember you, my man. And then we're going to see what's what.
Yeah.
They're probably looking great.
5-9,
27. Hey, Dave, do you? I know. So it's a Wednesday morning, late Wednesday morning, and a little bit later today, I'm going to go up to State College, get a little look at the Lions in practice, have some stuff on that later in the week. But Dave, I saw you up there, Penn State Media Day on Saturday. First time I'd seen you in a while. You're looking good, but you had a chance to talk to some people out on the field. I know you wrote some stuff about.
I talked to some people.
Parker Washington, Mike Yursich, the future maybe of that position, Penn State's offense. Anything else? One thing I wanted to ask you about, because it caught me by surprise, but what is there anything you didn't get a chance to write yet that kind of struck you from Media Day?
I want to write actually a little bit about, I did write a little bit about this. I actually led with it in the Parker Washington story. Did you see it? Because I was writing about Parker Washington's size, and he's built like a fortress, as you say, slapped together.
Yeah.
5'10", 207 officially.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he's 5'10". Do you think he's 5'10", 5'9"?
I mean, you know what the rule is, Dave. So we'll round up and say near 5'10", sure.
Yeah. But Taylor Stubblefield.
Yeah.
You forget his stats with the Joe Tiller.
I don't forget. I was
the basketball on grass era. Those were a couple of your first seasons.
Was Kyle Orton his quarterback? I think it was.
In 04 he was.
Yeah.
Before that, oh God, I can't remember the guy in between Breeze and Orton. It didn't go straight from one to the other. It was Billy Dickin, then Drew Brees, and then some other guy, and then Kyle Orton, but I can't remember. Anyway, it didn't matter who the quarterback was at Purdue then. You were going to throw the ball, and someone was going to catch the ball. But still, 73 or more catches every single year.
Yeah.
And Stubblefield was 5. I asked him what his playing weight was.
Yeah.
And he said, I was 5'11", 172.
Yeah.
And he caught 320 balls.
Like he left. Didn't he leave Purdue as like the leading all-time Big Ten receiver in catches?
Yeah, I mean, and can you imagine the punishment for a little body like that? So that at some point, I want to delve into how tough he had to have been.
Yeah. Didn't he wear number 21? He had a weird number. Was it 21?
They all had weird numbers.
Yeah.
They were all strange numbers on that team. I remember. The guys that were left over from the Breeze era also. I can't remember.
That's all right.
Vinny Sutherland was another one. He had a strange number, but I don't remember what they were anymore. Anyway, all those guys were kind of small and tough. Then they caught the ball. They caught everything thrown at them. So he couldn't have a better mentor, Parker Washington, than Taylor Stubblefield.
Yeah. So Dave, I think everyone knows Jahan Dotson led the Big Ten in receiving yards last year. Parker Washington, one of the top true freshman wideouts maybe in the country. He started from day one, had a big touchdown catch in overtime against Indiana. It didn't work out for Penn State that day. But I know you referenced this. Mike Yursich was positive about a lot of things during Media Day. Yeah. But the receiver room in general did not quite get that same kind of love. And he didn't mention anyone by name. So I think that Jahan and Parker are good, but I think that was like a siren call for, hey, we need a third, a fourth, and a fifth guy to get it together quick.
He knows, and I guess Lambert Smith might be one of the guys.
DeAndre Lambert Smith, sure.
And Daniel George, who has never really delivered on his promise. Is that fair? Would you say?
Well,
I've been expecting him to be that guy, and he really hasn't.
And it was kind of unfortunate when Clifford was a redshirt freshman. They were blowing somebody out, and I think it was 2018. He caught a 95-yard touchdown pass from Clifford, and it's the longest pass in Penn State history. And everyone's like, "Well, this guy's a star." And it was like Kent State. It was a blowout, and I just think that maybe that wasn't the best thing in the world that could have happened to him, because yeah, he looks good in in a uniform. He can run, he's big, but drop passes in 2019, didn't see him much in 2020, and you just have to wonder, after 3 or 4 years, if the light bulb hasn't gone on, why would it go on now?
I shades of who was the kid who caught the TD pass in the comeback against Minnesota in 2016?
Oh yeah. It was Irv Charles.
Irv Charles.
Yes.
That
Irv
was
Charles
the same kind of thing that happened with Irv Charles, because
right.
Huge play in that game that got him going. And everyone's like, oh, he's big, he's fast. And the ball kind of like wedged in his hands.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly Chris Godwin.
They pulled that game out of their butt in a lot of ways. And if they hadn't won that game, Dave, we're probably talking about a 500 team that year.
You were talking maybe about a new staff that year. I don't care what Sandy Barber or Chris Fowler say, or the crap that somebody fed Fowler. That would have been big trouble. There would have been people who overruled.
Maybe 2-3, Ohio State on the horizon, something like that.
I talked to some people. There would have been people in the hierarchy there would have been a decision. Yeah. It was that close. Yeah, it was a great comeback, and all of a sudden everything was completely different after that game.
Yeah,
it went to overtime. I mean, McSorley had to do that cross.
Barkley had that. The field goal drive late in regulation, and Barkley had that incredible run in overtime.
Wasn't a field goal 39 or 40 yards?
Tyler Davis.
Overtime? Yeah, it was not an easy field goal.
It was not. And as a matter of fact, I was thinking, I don't know about that. But Dave, I think one of the reasons that Yurcich can call out the wideouts is because Penn State can always go to that 2 tight end set. And maybe it's not a 3 wideout set. Maybe Theo Johnson, who's 6'6", 250, can be almost like a 3rd wideout split out wide. Maybe that's one thing that maybe Mike doesn't necessarily need a 3rd or 4th wideout if those tight ends are as good as James and Mike think.
Yeah, we got Brenton Strange, and
Brenton Strange is back. Theo Johnson is definitely gonna be a factor. They have a guy named Tyler Warren who's not ready yet, but played quarterback in high school, and he's making that conversion. So you never know.
That would harken back to an OB offense from 2012. He used
Matt Lehman,
Kyle Carter.
Yeah. Who else was in that? Jesse James,
Jesse James, Kyle Carter. Yeah. They were all good players, man.
And Brent Wilkerson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was, I think, the 4th guy. And, he never really panned out. Kyle Carter had 1 good year. Lehman had 2 good years. Jesse James was still playing in the NFL. So, yeah.
See,
but I think
my guy just got a text from Tom Lehman, and he don't like that shirt you're wearing too much.
They did get hosed. They did get hosed at Nebraska.
It was awful.
They did.
That was O'Neill's. That was O'Neill's crew, but it was actually people who hate O'Neill, John O'Neill, the head referee in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
always point to that game, but it was really the booth review.
Sure.
How could you look at that and not say that's a touchdown?
Yeah.
I mean, you blind? I mean, I don't know. I didn't understand it. Well, it's not conclusive.
As good as that team finished 8-4, they should have beat Virginia. Absolutely should have beat Virginia in the thick and field goal game, and they should have beat Nebraska. They were almost 10-2 with a loss to open the season at home against Ohio, because Billy didn't really have them. They didn't have their legs, because I put them through, I think, a tough camp. That was a way better team, I think, than people realize.
The Virginia, and don't forget Virginia game. McGloin got hurt, and Stephen Bench came in. Mm-hmm. He played for like a series and a half, didn't he?
Yeah, they. If you look at the stats, it was really Penn State's game to win. The only team that really had the better of them, I thought, was Ohio State and Braxton Miller. I think that was a whiteout game, or it was definitely played at night. But all those other games, man, they were in it. They were in every game, and that's one of my favorite teams by far.
Getting back to your Yurcich thing, a comment about how I wasn't imagining that, was I? We never really talked about
came out of nowhere.
Yeah. And he said that was my question. And I'm thinking, okay, well, he's talking about how it's not all on the wide receivers to have a balanced offense. You need balance to have a good offense.
Right.
And of course, there are times when you're going to tell the wideout, yeah, you got to beat this guy. You got to get open. But most of the time, it's dependent on other factors, whether you have a running game going, whether the rest of the team is functioning correctly. But then kind of went off, and he said, "But you asked about the wide receiver room, not good enough.
Yeah.
Not even close to good enough." So to me, and it was very matter of fact. It reminded me immediately of Bob Knight when he was in one of his moods, where he was trying to, that's a question, Bob, that the people who don't really understand football would ask. And he would be in one of those moods,
Yeah.
and he'd say, what we need out of our wide receiver group is not what we're getting right now, and we're gonna get it. Believe me. He would do stuff like that, or other people will play, which is exactly to your point. That's the kind of thing he was saying to me. He wasn't talking to us. He wasn't talking to me. He's talking to those guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked in the post, not the post media day video about, he is an impressive guy to converse with. I also like when you tried to shake his hand when we had the protocols and he looked at you and you kind of did an air handshake. I thought he was ready for anything you were throwing at him, Dave. He was ready for
not only that, but the first question I asked over there with you on the sideline.
You asked about.
It was one of my typical 15-second questions where you get done and you really don't know what the hell the question was. And he didn't try to finesse it. He just said, "What's the question again?"
He's a direct guy. I think.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. So he's going to be my Jack Crawford this year, I'm afraid.
It's okay.
Yeah.
There's room. Dave, so do you think, I'm trying to gauge how actually big of a loss Adisa Isaac is. The reason I say that is you've heard from the coaching staff, strength and conditioning, that this guy has a chance to be a great player, but he never really has done it yet at Penn State. This is his third year. He's got an injury. I think it's a lower leg injury, and it sure sounds like he's not going to be available this year. And that means their top 4 defensive ends from last year are out the door. And you just wonder, especially with the way the schedule starts. A couple weeks ago, you had talked about Phil Steele and how he thought the D-line could be really, really good, could really surprise some people. And even though Adisa isn't a returning starter, with him out of the mix, the early schedule, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the panic level if I think your Penn State staff and the fan base about just the defensive ends?
I never understood quite what Phil was talking about with his defensive line ranking, which he had Penn State's number 2 in the Big Ten, and it wasn't that good last year. I wouldn't have put it after losing all these guys. They're going to be better, that much better. I didn't quite understand it. Now you're talking about the typical Wisconsin zone blocking and slant plays, and they just seal one side and go after their 4 yards. And if they get 4, fine, they're good with it. If they get 8, they're better with it.
Yeah.
I mean, when they're rolling, that's what they do. They kill the defensive ends anyway.
Right.
If they feel like they have an advantage at tackle, which they so often do, that's what they want to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's definitely it's definitely a factor.
And a lot of the bodies they have outside, not only are they untested, they're not very big. There's no Etor Gross Matos, or Sharif Miller, lurking, and he's going to be a good player. They might all be solid players, but it's really hard when you open at Wisconsin and Paul Chryst is probably going to come out in a 3 tight end set, and he's just going to test them and test them and test them.
5 tight ends, as you used to like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, I think if Penn State does not get a lead early in that game and Wisconsin dictates that, it could be a long afternoon, but I still have a feeling that's going to be a really good game.
They got to score a lot of points. I mean, it could be a game unlike we've ever seen at Wisconsin. There was one game. There was one game. What year was that?
2002.
2002 when they went in there.
35-31.
That's right. That's right. It was your first year. That's why you
Penn
remember.
State got up on them big, and I think Wisconsin scored twice late.
And I remember asking Joe after that game, because it was not the kind of game he likes, where you get a small lead and then protect it and win 17-9, which back then you could still hope to do, but the game was changing right then. And they did win 35-31, and they had to get a touchdown at the end to ice it, I believe. I think it was, 28-24. And they got an extra. They didn't just sit on the ball. They went and drove for a touchdown. I believe that's what happened. My question was, Joe, do you yearn for the old days where you could just get a small lead and then protect it? Because this was a forerunner of things to come in college football. And he goes, I yearn for a lot of things.
Yeah, I'll bet he did at that time. I'll bet he did, Dave. Dave,
I think it could be that kind of game, and it's kind of on the offense right now in that game. If they can get by Wisconsin, then you're looking right ahead to Auburn. And something happened yesterday. They lost Tyrone Truesdale. They had a similar thing happen to them. They're projected starting. Well, he would have been their starting nose guard on that defense. Yeah, it was a big. He's just off the team, and there was no explanation when I heard it from Brian Harsin. I don't know why, but he was their big impediment, their giant, parking block in the middle of the defensive line. That's a big loss. Big experienced guy, and I think he made. He didn't have a lot of stats, but he was a very, very useful guy that you might have to double team.
Yep. You're listening to the Blue White Breakdown, PennLive's Penn State football podcast. Dave Jones and me, Bob Flounders, talking about Penn State after Penn State Media Day. Just a couple more points to get to, Dave. I don't know how much you care about it, but I always get a little bit of a kick. It means nothing. I think the inaugural coaches poll came out on Tuesday. The top 25 was released. Penn State checked in at number 20. There's 4 other Big Ten teams in the poll, and they're all ahead of Penn State. Ohio State's ahead of Penn State. Wisconsin's ahead of Penn State. Iowa is ahead of Penn State, and so is Tom Allen's Indiana Hoosiers. Receiving votes, Dave Jones, way down on the list, Jim Harbaugh's Michigan Wolverines. Man, when's the last time they were like entering the season like maybe is the 33rd best team in the country?
The irony
that might be a little high.
The irony of that is what? Has there ever been a program, and we're talking about for decades, that has been more overrated in preseason polls than Michigan? It's always overrated. I was reading some stuff about Bobby Bowden just yesterday, and they were referencing a game where they went into Michigan. Remember the game they went into Michigan in '93, the year they won the national title?
Yeah.
And it was a huge ticket in Michigan, and they had been in the national title hunt and had missed on a lot of the wide rights against Miami, but they've been right there for years, really since '87. They'd been in the national title hunt, and this was '93. And that game was number 1 Florida State against number 3 Michigan. And I'm like, what? Because I didn't, that was not, I think they did end up going to the Rose Bowl that year, but it was, they finished, I believe they finished 9-0-3. So they finished undefeated, but it was not like a memorable Michigan team. They very nearly finished 8-0-4 because the Rose Bowl against Washington was tied until the very end, which would have been great, 8-0-4. But they weren't in Florida State's league, but they were really rated number 3 at the Michigan year after year after year has been overrated in the preseason poll. So finally, maybe a lack of expectations will help them. Who knows?
You had to bring up the '93 Florida State team that beat Nebraska on that.
Oh, That's
You had
right.
to do it. You had to do it. Trev Albert suited up with a separated shoulder. It was a defensive slugfest. Neither offense could do very much for long stretches. A lot of field goals in that game. Actually, Nebraska had a chance to win it on a field goal late. The kick had no shot. And the late Bobby Bowden, that was his, I believe, was it first national championship?
Yes, 93 and
He would
99.
win it again against Virginia Tech.
Yeah, were his national titles. And so I did a little work. I talked to one of Steve Bench's old buddies, who is a captain
Richt?
on the 82 team.
Mark Richt?
No, his name is Tom. I never heard of him. He's a high school coach down there still. So he's like 65 or something. He's like my age. He's 60 years old. And I was a junior at Ohio State. And you remember back then, Florida State in 1982 really hadn't gotten it going yet at all. And Bowden was taking them everywhere.
Yeah. No home and home, just a ways.
Always a ways. Yeah, they played Nebraska that year. They played LSU at Nebraska. At Nebraska, at LSU, at Notre Dame, at Ohio State. I mean, it was insane. Yeah. And it was like the early John Chaney, anywhere, anytime, anywhere you want, we'll play you. And they didn't even get return home dates. I think they signed like a 4-for-0 against LSU. They signed a 2-for-0 against Ohio State. No one ever came back into Tallahassee.
Yeah.
And I was at that game. Art Schleister was the Ohio State quarterback. We had great seats. It was my junior year in design school. And it was a terrific game. But the Florida State band came. They brought their band, and their band never shut up the entire game. They were playing that nah, 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 nah. It was like they owned the place, because that was a different age in college football. Ohio State was kind of like Penn State back then, and Michigan. That it wasn't like a raucous crowd or anything. It was a real experience. All right, that's it for the Blue White Podcast this week. We'll see you next week. As always, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, tune in, and we'll have another edition. Until then, adios.